advisor, is always pleased to have Euan Rellie with us, the co-founder and managing partner of the investment banking firm BDA Partners. Euan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about your company and what you do.
We are a cross-border focused M&A firm. The original name of the company was Business Development Asia, and we've always had an interest in the Far Eastern markets. About 2/3 of our staff are spread across Asia. We've got 60 bankers in Asia, mostly in China, but also in Korea, Japan, now a new office in Vietnam in Ho Chi Minh City, in Singapore, Mumbai, and Dubai. So we cover a lot of ground, mostly small offices. Some of those offices only have 4 or 5 bankers, but we're really enjoying a big record year this year, in our 20th year, where we have already announced 21 M&A transactions for the year.
Robust year. Congratulations on that.
Some, however, lots of, if you work hard, you get lucky eventually.
Absolutely. You were on a panel today all about China, and we'll get to that in a moment.
Sure.
But first, let's talk about the new administration under
Sure.
a Trump presidency and what you anticipate, when this all settles down a little bit, to be the global business reaction.
Well, to be honest, it's too early to say. Already we're seeing a pivot from some of the antagonistic remarks that Trump and his supporters made during the campaign, and obviously that's very welcome, because the idea of demonizing substantial Asian powers is probably not going to be good for the U.S. economy or for the global economy. Look, I think at the end of the day, we've got to hope that Trump and his team are pragmatists, and I think there's some evidence of that already. It's not just about ideology here, and maybe you campaign differently from the way you govern. I hope that's the case. This is a country which continues to lead the world in developing content, in figuring out how to market products to consumers. And now that there's this really fast-growing emerging middle class in China, those consumers want Western product. They love the NBA, they love Hollywood movies, and they want more and more of that stuff. And I think certainly in the consumer realm, we're going to see a lot of investment interest from Asian buyers trying to come this way and buy stuff in the West. And I don't think that will be diminished. I hope it won't, and I don't expect it will be diminished by the Trump administration.
Through 2017, you still think that it will continue? Let's talk a little bit about the changing climate in China itself, with going from a made in China,
Sure.
If you will, to the technology. I mean, all of the production there right now.
Sure.
What exactly is going on, and where do you see that going in the future?
Well, there remains a lot of cheap capital at the moment, and again, it's a question as to whether that will last forever. We've seen 1 or 2 companies become a bit overextended and have to rein in some of their ambitions. But there's so much capital in China and so much enthusiasm to globalize and for the biggest and best Chinese companies to become global champions. They continue to find encouragement from the Chinese government to go outbound, and it's called the look outwards policy, to go out and find deals to do globally. I worry as to whether the U.S. will be receptive to Chinese capital. We continue to see that local governments around the U.S. are very keen to welcome Chinese investment, but some of the national level politicians, actually from both parties, have found it convenient to raise the specter of the Chinese bogeyman, the notion that every Chinese company is going to be stealing U.S. secrets and threatening national security, which could be a barrier, frankly, to some deals getting done. And I worry if the U.S. prevents investment coming into this country, that investment is going to go to Europe instead, which I think would be damaging for the economy here. But I'm not a pessimist, I'm an optimist about it, because I think the US has something unique. I think Europe has some luxury brands that are interesting, but I think in terms of really understanding how to appeal to the consumer in so many different ways, the US is a leader, and Chinese companies are very, very keenly aware of that. So I still see lots and lots of activity coming this way. I think there's one other really exciting development, which is that the private equity industry is really taking root now in China. And so it's not just the first wave was Chinese state-owned companies, and they were followed by some of the bigger Chinese private companies. But now you're actually seeing private equity firms, financial sponsors, who want to buy into U.S. companies and combine those with Chinese companies and create value that way. And I think that's a very exciting new trend, and certainly one that at BDA we're expecting to be able to benefit from that. And as I say, our revenues are up more than 30% this year. It could be as much as 50% by year end from last year, and we hope that trend's going to continue. We're going into 2017 with a pipeline that looks bigger and stronger than one we've ever had before. So we're not counting our chickens yet, but we are cautiously but strongly optimistic about the next year.
And then where do you see the greatest opportunity for investment, both by the Chinese and by investors outside of Asia going into China?
Sure. Well, I've talked about the Chinese coming here, and
Yep.
I think the consumer brands and that stretches from everything, movie studios we've seen already, but cosmetics companies, apparel companies. Take for example this company American Apparel, which has been through such turmoil in the U.S. and is now on its second bankruptcy. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see some Chinese money go into that company in due course. As far as going the other way, well, there's an emerging Chinese consumer as well. And so, and everything from consumer electronics to toys, to mother and baby products, to apparel. Even though the Chinese economy is slowing down a little bit, it still has such scale that it becomes an extremely attractive market for foreign investors. And I think the pricing expectations for Chinese business owners are becoming a little bit more realistic. I imagine we'll still see plenty of activity in the industrial manufacturing space, but from my point of view, some of those newer economies around consumer, tech, and healthcare are going to become more exciting in the coming year or two.
Do you still expect to see continued flow of workers coming from the rural areas in China going to the urban areas?
Yes, I think urbanization is still, that process is not completed yet. Excuse me, what we are seeing is clearly wages are going up in China. So there's going to be more investment in robotics as well, not just in human capital.
Interesting. Okay. Euan, thank you once again for your insight.
Great to see you. Thank you.